think about a church that hosts the Pride picnic every year? What do they think about a church that allows a drag show in their fellowship hall?
Or that has a gay minister.
Or has a gay minister. What are some other risks? Reputation, physical, theft, damage of property.
I think having our trust broken is a big one. You know, trusting somebody and that being broken that's pretty painful.
It is. It hurts, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But if you're going to practice radical hospitality, it's going to happen, isn't it?
Going to happen.
Yeah. All of these things that we've talked about so far are going to happen. So the back to that story of the Good Samaritan, the reason Jesus told that story was to say it's still worth it to take the risk. And that's what the kingdom of God looks like. Joan Chittister said this about hospitality: it is simply love on the loose. And although we don't use the word hospitality, we do use the word love a lot. Hospitality is simply an opportunity to show love and care to others.
Yeah, I think it mattered, like you said, Bob, a whole lot to Jesus, because even when he was inviting his disciples to go and spread the good news, he made it clear, if somebody doesn't accept you, dust off your sandals and leave them. So it was an expectation for Jesus that people welcome other people, and that there was, he even went on to say it'll be better for Sodom and Gomorrah in the day of judgment than it will be for them.
Yeah.
If they don't accept you in my name. So it's a big, big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, what about Jesus' reputation? Did hospitality harm his reputation?
It kind of led to his demise.
Yeah, kind of. It was everybody that he accepted was considered the wrong kind of people, and that was a large part of why he was crucified, isn't it?
Yeah, and Jesus even had his hospitality for his lack of by the Syrophoenician.
Right.
So remember that?
It was a learning
she
curve
really
for
kind of
Jesus
turned the
at one
mirror
point.
to him.
Yeah,
Right.
Desmond Tutu, kind of going back to what I said earlier about how it was a mutual survival thing in the Old Testament times for those nomads in the harsh desert conditions, that my survival depended on your hospitality, your survival depends on my hospitality. It's a mutual thing. Desmond Tutu talks about that in what the Africans call Ubuntu, which is that my survival as a human, my essence as a human, depends on your essence as a human. It recognizes that my humanity is bound up in your humanity. He says we can only be human together. he also goes on to say that it requires putting ourselves out there on behalf of others and being vulnerable, talking about risks. Vulnerability is an essential part of what it means to show hospitality to others. Comments or questions? Any questions? Anybody have a question this morning? Another prompt.
Y'all know I have a grandson who's in jail. And he, in jail, they don't provide stuff for him. They have to have a lot of help to have their needs met. And then there are relatives who say, you shouldn't be doing that to him. You shouldn't be helping him. He made his bed, he let him live in it, you know. But I don't feel that way, you know. And then the thing that really bothers me is how much do you help him? And then I remember Jesus saying you help him 70 times 7. So I will continue to help as long as I can help. And that's the way I feel about it. And even though some of my relatives say no, other friends will say yes. So those are some problems that I encounter in today's world, you know, where you try to be hospitable and other people say you shouldn't be, but you just have to take it on yourself to do what you think is right. You know?
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Roy. Anyone else? Comment? Okay, let me.
I think to hit on what Roy said. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You go ahead.
I was just going to say, with Roy about helping his grandson, and you know, there's a question of, to the point, am I helping them or am I hurting them?
Yeah.
Right, by providing
Right.
hospitality continuously, and am I enabling them? And I'm not saying in any way that that's what you're doing, but some people will take advantage of hospitality and will wear you out. So
Right.
I just want to voice that this morning.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, I said I was going to circle back to the Sodom and Gomorrah story. When the three visitors, travelers, angels unaware, stopped at Abraham's tent, when they left, they headed towards Sodom. What happened in Sodom is that Lot welcomed them into his home, but then the townspeople wanted to do something to them, wanted to harm them in some way. What we need to understand is what they were asking for was a practice that often happened in the non-Jewish towns, especially, where people were made to feel unwelcome and were harmed through what would be called rape today. This is a way of putting them in their place. If you're going to stay, understand your place is below us. And so they would rape them and do harm to them. They would be violent to them. That's what that story in Sodom and Lot was about. That the townsfolk were wanting to have their way, in other words, rape them, to put these unwelcome visitors in their places. This is not about homosexuality. It's about being unhospitable to these strangers. And I thought it was important that we put these two stories in contrast with each other. The hospitality of of Abraham and Lot, who also took care of these strangers, compared with the unhospitality of the townsfolk, which led to the demise of Sodom. Comments or questions about that?
I don't think any LGBTQ person could let that statement be said and not respond in acknowledging how tremendously harmful that misinterpretation has been throughout history.
Yeah, yeah. And you said throughout history, let me add to that. It's not throughout all history, it's throughout recent history. Only since about 1940s has that been the case.
You're talking about the misinterpretation?
Well, the misinterpretation, and which was back read into the story of Sodom and Gomorrah because of that mistranslation in the Revised Standard Version. Henri Nouwen says, true hospitality is welcoming the stranger in her own terms. This kind of hospitality can only be offered by those who have found the center of their lives in their own hearts. And then I want to finish talking about that story of Jesus and the turning of water into wine. These were huge pots of water that were turned into wine. Talk about overkill or unrestrictive hospitality that knows no ends. The pots that held the water were gallons and gallons and gallons and gallons of water. So when Jesus turned the water into wine, these 6 large vats held like 180 gallons of water. Imagine 180 gallons of wine, 180 gallons of grace. That's enough wine for the whole city, for the whole country, maybe the whole world. Hospitality is meant to be given as freely and as overabundant as Jesus turned water into wine. That's grace. That's what hospitality is supposed to look like. And to that, I might say, I'll drink to that. Final comment, anyone? Or question? We've got just about another minute. Well, thank you for joining us today, for your participation. I appreciate everyone who has a comment or a thought or a question. We value your participation with us every week and are so glad when you do. Please come back next week. We'll look at the topic of idolatry, which may sound like something that only happened a long, long time ago, but it's not. We'll talk about what idolatry looks like in today's world. God bless you. See you next week.